I have a hoodie now. Let's have a look at the types of question. So typically, these are the types that you're going to expect to see. So the first type is matching. What that means is that usually the paragraphs are labelled A, B, C, D, and you have to match each paragraph to a heading. This is where your skimming and scanning skills come in very, very handy, because you should be able to just read over the paragraph very, very quickly and think up of a title for it. Another variation of the matching exercise is when you have to match a paragraph to a certain point of information. So they'll ask you which paragraph contains this point of information. The next type is MCQ, and MCQ comes in 3 different variations. So you can have A, B, C, D, yes, no, not given, and true, false, and not given. Usually these questions are in parts 2 and 3. They tend to be kind of tricky, but they can appear in part 1 as well. So if you have A, B, C, D, usually what's going to happen is the same thing as what happened in the listening. So A, B, C, and D, the options are going to be mentioned in the paragraph, all of them, usually. So it isn't good enough just to look for random words in the paragraph and say, oh, okay, I see something that's a similar phrasing. They know you're going to do that, and they've designed the questions specifically to trick you. So what you need to do is, say for example, question 30 is in the last paragraph. Read the last paragraph very carefully and rule out. So for example, I know B is impossible, I know C is impossible, it's A or D. Read it again to sort of see, okay, which one is A and D. Ruling out the impossible options is useful for any type of multiple choice question, because you don't go with your intuition, you go with fact. It's much better, because people tend to panic a lot in exam conditions. So, yes, no, and not given are to do with the views of the person who wrote the passage. They will always give you an explanation what they mean by yes, no, and not given. So there'll be a little box and they say yes if it agrees with the views of the writer, no if it disagrees with the view of the writer, and not given if there's no information, or if there's no way of knowing that, if there's no information to support it. Whereas true, false, and not given are just about the information in the text, so not about the views of the writer. So yes and no and true and false people find quite easy. Basically, you know it's true if there's supporting evidence. You know it's false if there's contradictory evidence. Not given trips people up a little bit, because they find it difficult to know between false and not given. Basically, just read the paragraph that's related to the question very carefully, and only that one. And if you don't find anything about it, the question, then it's not given. A lot of students would read like 3 paragraphs further down trying to find something, and they won't. They won't. Okay, the next bit is sentence or summary completion. So typically what would happen is that you would get a paraphrasing of something that was said in the text. You might have it several sentences, like summary completion, or you could just have a sentence. Pay attention here specifically to spelling and grammar and your word limit. So if it says 1 word, only complete it with 1 word. Sometimes what happens in summary completion as well is they give you a list of words that could go in. Okay, so classification. This is typically, it's common to get like places or people. So for example, Newton and Einstein, and you would get like A, B, C, D, several options. So you have to match, okay, Newton discovered gravity according to the text, and Einstein made the theory of relativity according to the text. So it's really, really similar to matching. Again, similar to sentence or summary completion, you have completing notes, charts, or diagrams. So if something visual is being represented, for example, like a car engine or a clock, you'll be given a semi-labeled diagram and you have to complete it. And then also you have short answer questions. So they ask you a question and you have to pay attention. Is it one word only or 2 words? Usually the words they're going to ask you from the text, so you have to quote it from the text. If you use a synonym that's of your own invention, it's not going to be correct, so pay attention to the instructions. My advice here is to underline keywords. So as you're skimming and scanning the text, underline keywords and always be thinking of synonyms. The same goes for the question. I always tell students to skim and scan the questions, underline any keywords in the question, and think of synonyms as you're reading it. Because what IELTS always does is it's not going to be as straightforward as, you know, what does Tim think about global warming? And you're going to find in a paragraph, Tim thinks that global warming is awful. It's never going to be that straightforward. So always think of synonyms. So instead of think, they could say something like believe, suggest, assert, suppose, argue. Many, many different ways to say the same thing. Okay, so let's have a look at the tips. Tips would be 1, to improve your reading speed. Native speakers would read around about 300 words per minute, so you should be aiming to meet that. And the way you do that is by getting lots of practice, lots and lots of practice. So aim to read something every day. That's the biggest tip I could give you. You raise your fluency through practice. While exam strategy, of course, is important, you need to just give your brain the practice so that reading long texts is not unusual for you. So I recommend reading articles from The Guardian, The Economist, National Geographic, and have a look at TED Talks and blogs. This is also useful for your listening. The next bit is, of course, skimming and scanning. I covered that before. Always skim and scan your questions and your answers. It is up to you which one you're going to do first. Some people like to read the questions first. They find it kind of helps them. Other people, if you have a really, really fast reading speed, they prefer to get an idea of the text first and then read the questions and then go back and read everything in more detail. Fiddle around with it. It's up to you. It depends on your reading speed, to be honest, which one you do first. And then the last 2 tips, really important, and a lot of students lose marks over this, is spelling and grammar. So for example, some people would omit the third person S. Something as small as that, even if it's the correct answer, but has no S at the end, would be detrimental to, getting it correct or incorrect. The same with word limit. Say, for example, it's a short answer question. They're only looking for 1 word. And instead of car, you said old yellow car. Even if in the text they said old yellow car, that answer is going to be incorrect because they only asked for 1 word. So IELTS is really, really pernickety about these kinds of things. So as long as you come in with the right type of strategy and you've practiced loads beforehand, you'll be fine. Bye.